Welcome back. For many parents looking to send their kids to college, the 529 Savings Program offers a plan toward that goal. However, new changes to the program could provide families with more options for security in their futures. Senior Industry Analyst for Bankrate, Ted Rossman, joins me to discuss the program. Ted, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Now, for those who are unaware, can you please give us a little bit more details about the 529 Savings Program?
This is basically a tax advantaged college savings program. So, the way it works typically is that you're not going to pay federal or state taxes when you take out money that's a qualified distribution. So, basically, you put it in there. You do pay federal taxes on the front end. You get a state tax break. But then the real advantage is when it comes time to take the money out, you're not going to be taxed on those distributions. So the idea is this money grows over time. Later on, you take it out for college tuition or room and board or other qualified, often higher education expenses, and then you're not going to have to pay taxes on that money. So it's sort of a double win. There's the tax advantage, but there's also this discipline of saving and investing and encouraging people to put this money aside for the future.
Now, can you explain how it actually works? Because I'm very curious. Is it parents or guardians putting maybe like $10 a month into an account? How does it actually work?
It could be, yeah. I mean, it could be amounts that small. It could be somewhat larger amounts as well. But yeah, it's kind of like your workplace retirement plan where the idea is to periodically put more money in. So you could actually set up an automatic transfer. That would actually be a great idea that, every paycheck you have some money put into this 529 plan for your kids or grandkids, and then it grows over time. Slow and steady can win the race when it comes to some of these longer term financial goals. And I often point out that with retirement, for example, every dollar you set aside in your 20s or 30s might be 30 or $40 by the time you retire decades later, just because money grows in the market. And for college savings, it's probably not going to grow quite that much because you have more of a constrained time frame. But hey, I mean, if you have a young child now, maybe they're not going to college for 15 or 16 or 17 years. I mean, you can get a lot of gains here. So there's the tax advantage, but there's also the fact that, look at it this way: if you're getting a 10% return, which is pretty typical historically in the stock market, your money's doubling roughly every 7 years. So I know that college costs are going through the roof, but one way that we can fight back against this is by saving and investing early and often. It doesn't even have to be huge sums to make a difference.
Now, this seems very beneficial to any of the recipients that are in the program. What do these funds actually go toward?
You could use this for tuition, room and board, books, computers, really a wide variety of education expenses. In New York, it's focused much more on college. Some states actually let you take distributions for K to 12 education, like for private school, for example, tuition. In New York, that does not have a tax advantage. It was kind of left open to the states to decide whether or not to opt in and out. So for New Yorkers, I would say we should think about this as a college retirement or a college investment vehicle.
Now, when should a parent actually begin looking into the savings program, especially if this is something maybe that they're just hearing about for the first time?
It's kind of like that proverb about the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. I think early and often is the name of the game if you can. Now, I understand that money is tight and a lot of people, unfortunately, are having trouble meeting day to day expenses. And you think about college and it's like, whoa, that's just, not attainable. I would stress that every little bit can count. So, do what you can. There was a recent change that actually eliminated, I would say, one of the barriers to saving and investing, which is that some people worried that if their child doesn't go to college or maybe wins a scholarship, that this money is then wasted. Because if it's not used for qualified higher education expenses, then there's a penalty. So there's a 10% penalty, plus you're taxed on all the earnings. That has been a deterrent for people. That barrier has been removed to some extent. So actually starting this year, if you have unused 529 funds, they can actually gradually be transferred into a Roth IRA retirement plan. So there are limits. You can only convert up to $35,000 lifetime, and you can only convert up to $7,000 a year if you're under age 50. But still, I do think this has removed one of the potential barriers to saving and investing.
So you brought up something that I thought was very interesting, which was age, because people finish college at any age. Um, is that one of the restrictions or one of the limitations that if you're over a certain age and maybe you haven't used the money yet, are you no longer able to use it? Can you kind of maybe go into some of those details?
There are some things you can do there. So there's not an age limit on who can use these funds. So if you're somebody who maybe has been in the workforce in a while and then goes back to school and you have access to 529 money, you can use that. It's also very easy to change the beneficiary. So, if you have multiple children and maybe the oldest didn't go to college, or maybe they got a scholarship, or they didn't use all the money, you can change the beneficiary and use it for another child, or potentially even grandchild. So, that part is very flexible. The key, though, is qualified education expenses. And in New York, higher education expenses. That's the main barrier. It's not necessarily the age or the person, but I think some people don't realize that you can transfer to other children or grandchildren or even yourself.
Now, you kind of talked about the changes that were coming to the plan. How does this change benefit families who actually have the 529 savings plan?
I think it has two main benefits. The first one is that it opens up more uses for this education money without the penalty. So the fact that you can convert that into retirement savings and investments, that's valuable because we know a lot of people are undersaved for retirement as it is. So it's kind of a double win there. So I think that is really important. And just at a time that all these costs are going up, I think that eliminating some of these barriers to entry is definitely important. Um, because some people say that they're not contributing just because they worry that, oh, what if I'm going to end up paying the penalty because my kid doesn't go to college, or because they got a scholarship. The fact that now you can convert this into a retirement plan is useful. Again, though, it's not all at once, and it's maybe not the full amount. I mean, you do need to be mindful of some of those limits, like that $7,000 a year limit for most people, and the $35,000 lifetime cap. But I think it's still a step in the right direction.
So that was going to be my next question. With this change, would you still recommend maybe a parent or a guardian who is looking to, looking into the program? Is this still something that is worth taking a look at?
I think it is, definitely. Yeah, I think that the tax benefits are important, but I think also the discipline of routinely saving and investing, I think is really beneficial. So I do think 529 plans are useful. New York has a good plan that has that state tax deduction. So if you're a single contributor, you can deduct up to $5,000 a year in state income. If you're married filing jointly, it doubles to 10,000 a year. So there is that tax advantage on the front end. There's the tax advantage on the back end where these qualified distributions are not going to be taxed. But I also think just sort of this future look is really important, similar to retirement savings. I know it may feel far off, but I think it's sort of twofold. I think it's the tax advantage, but I think it's also just getting started because you don't really want to time the market. You want to have more time in there, and over a 10 or 20-year period, there's a very high likelihood that those contributions will rise in value substantially.
Now, I'm curious to know how could this program help families who struggle with financial literacy, or could it maybe bring up some challenges for families who struggle with financial literacy?
I think it's one of these things where a little bit now can turn into a lot later on. That idea that with a 10% annual return, your money is doubling every 7 years or so. I mean, if you start when your child is born or soon thereafter, you might have two and a half of those doubling periods by the time they go to college, maybe even three by the time they finish college. So, in that sense, money is accumulating more money. And then you throw in the tax advantage, and that is a further benefit. So I do think it's a good idea to get started early if you can. I mean, even if it's only 25 or 50 bucks a month or a paycheck. Maybe you can also look to bump it up over time. I think, like your retirement savings, sometimes there's an element of you don't miss what you don't see. So if you get a raise or every few months, maybe you can try to bump up that contribution.
Now, how can those who are interested create one? And what are the steps to doing this, especially if you have multiple children?
nysaves.gov is the New York State 529 plan website, so it's easy to sign up there and get more information. We also have more information at Bankrate about 529 plans and the importance of saving for college. There's sort of multiple schools of thought with multiple children. One is if you do have just a single plan, you can change the beneficiary later on. So, like if your oldest child doesn't use all the money, you can just easily change the beneficiary to another child, and then it's kind of as simple as that. There are, though, sometimes benefits to having separate accounts because it does keep things maybe a little more organized so you know exactly what each child has. But also, with this conversion we're talking about where unused funds can be transferred to somebody else, the account for that purpose has to be open in that person's name for at least 15 years. So that's actually a good reason to have separate plans if you have separate children.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. I definitely learned a lot, and I hope the parents and guardians out there have definitely learned a little bit from this segment. So, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
For more guidance about these changes to the 529 plan, please go to www.bankrate.com. Stay tuned, we have more open for you right after this.